Now we got to take and put this on this, get it traced out, kind of put it at the edge and get it traced out, and then we can make us a plate that'll fit the back of this motor in the back, right there where we unbolted that power steering pump. I don't know if it's on this side or that side. I think it's on this side. Anywho, we got the motor puller fixed and back together. So, it's rolling good for now. Is it going to last? Who knows, to be honest. Now, once I get this cut and drilled and finessed into shape or whatever, pull that motor back. Hopefully we can get it ground down and getting it fitted. And I don't have no good spray paint to put on there, a decent color. I could just use that old military looking stuff we got. I got plenty of it, so we'll get that fitted and silicone and put on the back of the motor. That'd probably be a day, to be honest. It's starting to get dark. That's going to take a little bit of time to do that, to get it to where it's beautiful. And, pull the motor back and fit it a couple times till it's on there just right. We'll have to slick it up and find bolts that'll fit in there. The bolts that came to it were really long, so, that'll be holding us up. I'll beat on that firewall a little bit, and hopefully we can get it to where it's whatever. In and out a couple times, get it bolted up, and then we'll pull that alternator off. We'll have to pull that throttle body off, that whole manifold, and that'll be probably tomorrow, and start working on our plate. It'll be out, in, out, whatever. Cut a piece, have another piece come in there, tack it all together, make sure it'll fit, just to stick it up there and make sure it'll fit with the bolts tight. Wait to find bolts or whatever we got to do, and go from there. It needs pressure wash, but I don't have a way to go get it, and I don't want to bother nobody or whatever. But I do know if you pressure wash them motors, it takes like 2 or 3 days for it to dry out. We're probably 2 weeks before it'll ever fire off. I could get it done faster, but in reality, it's probably going to take a little time. Once I get the motor mounts bolted up, I'm talking cleaned up, slicked up, ground down, make them look the way they're going to make them look. And, you could just bring that motor mount out here to the front, mount it on the 3, and mount that to the 4 bolts you got there, and just be like, we don't want to do that. I want to put that motor mount back close to where the factory one was, if we can't just put that factory one back in there. But once we get it all tacked in, obviously it's got to come back out. And we got to put everything on it, the manifold and the alternator, and make sure all that's going to fit. Put it in there. Once we get it, welded enough to where it ain't going to be like, going to fall apart when you pull it, put a little inch weld on whatever and just kind of hold it. And then get it out, get everything welded up solid, get it back in, get it bolted up, and then we can crank on getting that interior apart. We might break something in there, whatever it is. It needs to be pushed back enough or busted out enough so we can grind it and just make some fiberglass pieces, so when we put the heater box back up there, it's not too bad. Now, I was even thinking about maybe trying to find some of those old slide controls and get rid of all that electric crap. Make a bracket that would fit in there and just bolt that in there, and you can slide it from heat to cold, open up the flappers or whatever. I see people that do it with a piece of wire sometimes. I had a buddy who used to do stuff like that. He's like, I can't get the vent thing to work, and it's got a control module on it. You got to get it programmed, and the heck with that. I just want some heat and slide open whatever for the floor or for the windshield, and that's good enough for me. And he even had it hooked up to where he was like, if I get the AC hooked up, I can make it to where it'll make the AC work. And he runs like a bypass valve on it sometimes to where he can just, you know, take a ball valve or whatever, turn it off and bypass the heater when it's hot outside. That way that evaporator ain't getting fluid through it to where it's hot. You know, you turn that, you bypass that, you'd be surprised how cool it really is with the windows down. So, but my cousin, he took and pressure washed his motor off. He had came in, and what had happened was he kept getting a bad leak. You know, he had a bad leak. He went over and put about $20 worth of quarters, got it cleaned up, but it wouldn't start for 2 or 3 days. So I could go bum the pressure washer, but I don't want it to tear up on me if you catch my drift. So to pull that truck out far enough to pressure wash all that, pressure wash the motor, and then whatever, clean this out. Be a couple of days. It'd take a couple of days to do all that. But we're going to just try to make this plate today. That's probably going to be a day. Let's be honest. I can't get that to cut it with the plasma cutter good enough. I don't have it hooked up 220 either. And to say, you know, if you was to make that plate 3-4 inches long, I'm not talking down on that plate. I started thinking, I thought, well, you know, maybe that wouldn't be so great, because time you make that adapter piece to go in there to do whatever, you know, you add a couple whatever inches to it, that's going to be expensive. A piece of 3-inch or even a 4-inch thick piece of a whatever, you know, it'd be a lot. And to make it fit, if you had a tool to where you could scan the back of the motor and have it milled out for the pipe to where it would just go on there just so beautiful that it was made for it perfectly. I know people that do stuff like that. I mean, you could honestly fab up a bracket for, you know, the crank pulley, make a new crank pulley to where it would catch the belt and the AC pump with the factory stuff you've already got and bolt it up. You know, you could bolt up that factory AC pump and that factory power steering pump. There's a million ways to do it and make it look clean. You know, just put everything on this side, use your factory stuff, and use your factory heater controls. And then you would have to go through the wiring schematic and build the wiring harness out beautiful, you know, to make it just look factory clean. You could do it. Extend some wires, or actually just make a whole new wire and put a pin on it. I used to make wiring harnesses. We had a kit, like a board. I just had a board drawn out, and I had a plug made up, factory plug, and I just had what color wire went to what color, and we made it all match the factory harness. It was a plug and play type of thing. I sold a few of them. But, you know, you have that one person that can't make it work with what he's got. He already had a problem. So I had to fix his car. I don't want to do that. You know. And sometimes they're just pranking. I don't do that pranking stuff. I don't want to jack with that. Somebody trying to prank me, you're not my friend. You know, don't make, you know, a cheap little wiring harness turn into, you know, it's got a lot of blow-by, the transmission. I rebuilt the transmission and everything just to make it right. And then they take it and sell it. Oh, thanks. I was just trying to get it fixed. Oh, God. And, you know, they sell it for cheap. Like, buddy, you gave it away. You know, I was about to get sued, you know. It was like, whatever, buddy. I'll fix it. And I got friends that can do stuff, too, you know. If I can't figure it out, I take somebody I know that's good enough. But like, I put it on the machine, man, transmission's good, blah, blah, blah. They can tell you when, you know, things are getting weak or whatever. And, you know, when he got done with it, it was right. Cheaper than I could pay for the parts, let's put it that way. He wasn't helping me out, it's just what he charged. He was good, you know, he was fast, and that's what he did all the time. He bopped that thing apart and back together in 2 hours with the parts, you know. And had it pressure tested. And all back together. You know, it's like, put it in, it's ready to go. Clean it up a little bit. You know, I usually paint the cases, but I charge for that, so whatever. But that's kind of the stuff I used to run into, you know, trying to do stuff like that, you know, try to make a kit and make it to where, you know, just put it on there and ready to go. It took a long time to figure all that out, you know, same color wire. You know, if you was to look through a whatever, it would be colored and striped or whatever solid, but it was one continuous wire. It wasn't butchered with a, you know, a butt connector or something, just an extended wire. It was right off the roll with a new pin, right into a brand new whatever. We did a few of those. They tried to trick sack me. They get beat in the head and they act like they owned everything. Oh, okay. You're like that, huh? And that's the way they are. Sometimes when you try to let people help you or something, you know, they act like it's theirs, or you owe them so much money that you couldn't, it ain't worth it. Everybody don't owe you nothing. You know, you can't let nobody help you. That's why I don't let nobody help me anymore. They pulled some slick stuff like that. But we'll try to get all this done. It's going to be a while. Let's put it to you like that. If you don't hear a video for a couple of weeks or something, you know, I get this, whatever. I need some grinding rocks. That plasma cutter won't do it. I don't have no tips, so I'm a little tapped out. So it might be, I think we're only like 8th or 10th day of the month, so it might be 2 weeks before we make another video after this. So depending on whatever. I made a video this morning, kind of a little update, blah blah blah. I made a little blah 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 video on the motor puller, so I'm going to kind of space them out. And this phone ain't really wanting to take a lot more videos, so I had to delete some stuff too. So if we can get this and get it put on and get it out and get it bolted up, I'll do another video on that. And then depending on if we can get some grinding rocks or cutting wheels, I try to find some local. If I got to do it on Amazon, it'd be 2 or 3 days and whatever I got to pay for it. I got to make sure I got enough for me. You know, 10 days in. Now if we was like, you know, 5 days to whatever, I could do it, but I got to be careful. I want to tap myself out. But unless somebody wanted to make a donation, you know, I need like $100 for some grinding wheels or whatever. You know, I got that PayPal. It's PayPal Mr. Howard 123, so it's on there. If somebody wanted to donate, I give you a shout out. But that's kind of where I'm at. So, you know, can I do it eventually? But if you want a video or something, you have to make a donation. These motor mounts is going to be a lot. I got the one. We can go ahead and maybe do something with that, but to get that other one in there, I want to make the plates and get the snake fit. That way it comes around that oil dipstick tube. And we'll have to get it tacked all together and then weld it all out, grind it all up, spray paint it, bolt it in, get the motor bolted up. Once I get that motor bolted up and the motor mounts on it, then we'll start working on, I could actually start taking the dash apart. You know, but I don't want to really have that motor puller holding it in the transmission, just kind of whatever. I could put the one motor mount on it or something, but, you know, not making up excuses. That's just kind of the struggle right now. To pull that alternator off and pull that manifold off and then be able to get in there. That's the easy part, but you got to make sure you got enough room for that manifold too. So you'll have to get that plate made up in there, however, and then you're going to put that manifold back on there and it not hit. So you have to pull it out, make sure it's, once it's bolted up, it's not going to hit. And then if you get your bracket in there, so that manifold's got to come back off. So, you know, that's the struggle. To get those 2 bolts in there, get it bolted up flat, get it finessed to where it's, you know, just sitting in there flat. Get your other plate, then make your pieces to snake it all in there and be able to get that motor mount in there. That's going to be a lot on that driver's side. And then clean it all up, spray paint it, whatever. That's saying a lot. So we might just do the one, and we'll have to pull that motor back out in order to get all, it's just too tight. I'll just be honest, it's too tight. To get the hoses and beat it back, might be a good test fit. Okay, it's bolted up. We might weld one motor mount on it, and then whatever on this other one, that's going to be a lot. If I had a cutting torch or something where you just cut the pieces and tack them in, and, you know, just little, you know, maybe a 1/4 inch long weld, just enough to make sure it's going to hold in there, and get one tacked, unbolt it, or just pick it all up as is one piece with the manifold and the alternator on it, weld it out, take it off, weld it out solid, and stick it all back, ground down, and spray painted, and weld the motor mounts in solid, and then be able to pull it in and pull it out. Make sure you can do it with the way it's going to go in there, if that makes sense. So to get it in there and just weld it, and that's fine, but to get it out and get it back in a couple times with the way the motor plate goes in, you know, if that motor plate or if that transmission won't come up high enough and you can't get it stabbed and then jack up the transfer case to get it to slide together and set down on the mounts, that's the finesse. And then obviously it's going to clear, and you can get the bolts in it, and you can get your pipe out there. We might have to put a different pipe in there, you know, flexi hose to come from the back of the motor and just lay up under the intake or above the intake so we can tap into our factory radiator. And, you know, we get all the plumbing done. We hook up our reservoirs, your windshield wipers, your antifreeze overflow from the factory stuff off the Colorado. And I'd like to put the factory air box in there and figure out a way to get plumbed into that over to our factory box, and everything, you know, a bracket to maybe hold something up. You might have to make some stuff, you know, to make it look decent. I'm not saying perfect. That's a cobble job at best. You beat on a firewall, that's cobbling, you know. And it needs a power steering or a rack. It needs a manual rack and a shorter belt for the alternator, whatever. That's a lot in itself. Okay, so be prepared for like maybe 2-3 months worth of figuring it out just right there. And then once you get that wiring harness in there, you get the lines, you get some whatever, and you know, it's probably not going to run real good at idle if I delete all those lines. You know, you just cap them off or whatever, you can pull that stuff out. But to get it tuned out there, I think it's like I think a cheap little tune was $150. You know, you send them your PCM, or you get another PCM and give them the VIN number off of that motor and send it out, plus the ECU. I think you got to tune both of them. That might be south of $500 to get it to where it's beautiful. Could have hooked that evap stuff up, not without hooking up that factory tank. You know, it came out of that car. It's kind of what I'm thinking. I don't know. I contacted Sleeper Dude and asked him what he would do. From what I've read up on HP tuners, you know, you get that ECU to where you can have it unlocked, so you can hook HP tuners to it, and you would have to pay once a year. That involves the MDI interface from the laptop to the OBD2 port. Pay for the subscription for either the motor or the truck or both for the year, and then have internet that can do it. So, within saying that, that's a lot. We'll see. I haven't heard nothing back yet. Last guy said, you know, I asked him to make me something as far as whatever. He said he's just not taking on nothing. They ain't gonna do it. It's not a front wheel drive car. You know, he's just like, he's got stuff made up, ready to go for a front wheel drive car, basically. And we got to do the transmission lines and all that. So, and a transmission controller to shift it. You just, like a manual valve body, pull it down at first, go up through the gears, and then hit the overdrive button and it's driving. You got to turn off the overdrive button and shift back down through the gears. But when it's sitting there at idle, it needs that evap solenoid deleted if you're not going to have it in there. You might be, they make a tool to where you can take just a roll of that line and you can heat it and with a torch and bend it as long as it don't kink and just make it whatever. And it's got a little tool to where you clamp one and clamp the other, and you just squeeze it together, and it's just a press fit or an interference fit, as they call it in machine work. You know, it's just like it goes on there. It's got a barb fitting. You squeeze it together, and once it's there, you pressure test it, or you can smoke test it if it is still having a problem. You can even do that to the gas tank or the exhaust too. So, don't have a smoke machine. I know how to do it. You might be able to force gump your way through it. That's basically what I would be doing. So, I'm not no pro or nothing, but I've read up enough to be like, you know, possibility. So, that's probably a day once we get this and get it out and beat on it a little bit and get it back in there. And then once we know we can get our bolts tight, I'll have to tighten it up, see what the clearance is between the oil pan and all this other stuff. So if you was to extend that out, that's what I was getting at. That would put you out hitting all that stuff. You know, can you lift the motor up? Yeah. Can you beat it all back? Whatever. But we need to make sure we got room for the wiper arm to come in there and work. I don't want no problems with that. You know, I don't want to have to not have no wipers. We got to have wipers. We got to have headlights, taillights, turn signals, and some heat at least to defrost the windows. Hazard signals and transmission controller that works. It's a lot. And to use 2 wiring harnesses to make one fit, you know, in theory it should work, but, you know, it's going to take some figuring.